So let's start out by talking, as we normally do, about EPICS supported platforms. Not a lot of well, kind of the expected, but there's also some unexpected things here, and we'll talk about that. So first off, you can always get to our EPICS list of supported platforms on our website. That's under, from our main website, it's under the EPICS menu. Just go to supported platforms, and there's a link there that you'll have when you download the slides, but it's very easy to get to. So we are dropping EPICS support, and there won't be any surprises here, for Windows XP, which was of course released in 2001, so 20-year-old operating system. I know it was a good one, but it's got to go. Windows Server 2003, which no surprise was released in 2003, and Windows Vista, which was released in 2006. So there's a lot of reasons for this, and I'll talk about that more about that in just a minute. We do offer full support for all the Windows 10 and Windows Server 2019 updates. You know, Microsoft puts out those quarterly or even more frequently, depending, their feature updates, and then of course all of their usual recommended and required updates, security updates, and so on. We offer full support for all of those. You know, we download all of those pretty much as soon as they come out. If you do encounter any problems with an update, please let us know, because that has happened on occasion, that a Microsoft update has has caused unexpected problems. So please let us know if you see anything, but we do stay on top of that, and we make sure that we stay on that. Windows 10, of course, is right now is Microsoft's one and only name for Windows. They have said that they're going to stick with that name forever, but as any of you who have a Windows phone in your pocket might know, forever is never really forever with Microsoft. So we're always staying on top of that. The announced release date for SQL Server 2021 is in November. We will be offering full support for that. I've tried out some of the community pre-releases and don't see anything that would cause us any problems at all with EPICS. So full support for that when it comes out. We have not yet tried out anything for Windows Server 2022. It has not, other than the name, it really hasn't. They've not released a date or really any other major details, but we don't anticipate any issues with that. So I would not expect any problems with Windows next version of Windows Server. So the next topic, Crystal Reports Designer. So the current 32-bit version of Crystal Reports is SAP Crystal Reports 2016. And again, that is a 32-bit application. That is, I know a lot of you are running 2016. It's the latest 32-bit version, which means it is the only version that is officially supported for 32-bit applications, 32-bit workstations, and so on, which means that is the only one that's officially supported with EPICS. There may be a catch here, though. So SAP Crystal Reports 2020, of course, came out last year, is 64-bit only. And if you read all the documentation on SAP's website, it says only works with obviously only works with 64-bit Windows, but only works with 64-bit applications, 64-bit viewers, 64-bit everything. So if you design, they say on the FAQ that if you design a report in Crystal Reports 2020, you can only run it from 64-bit applications or in a 64-bit environment. Well, I was going to prepare a slide that showed you what happens if you try to do it anyway. And I was surprised that it worked. So with SQL Server, at least, when you create a Crystal, the DSN that you use to create your connection to the EPICS database from either Crystal or from EPICS, you know, by default, we name one Crystal SQL Server. When you create that DSN in EPICS or straight from the DSN manager, it creates both a 32-bit and a 64-bit DSN, and it's apparently the SQL Server driver is smart enough to automatically route the traffic correctly. So I was actually able to create a report in Crystal Reports 2020 and run it from EPICS with no problem. I was able to take an existing report, modify it, save it, and run it from EPICS v9 with no problem. So Crystal tells you it doesn't work, and we cannot guarantee that it will work, but my experience so far is it seems to be fine, at least with SQL Server. Have not tried it yet on Oracle, but I know that affects a very small number of you. But I would say if you've got Crystal 2020 already, hey, modify a report, try it out in EPICS, make sure it works, and hopefully it will continue to work, regardless of what SAP says about that. But for both 2016, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 2016 and 2020, it's probably not worth going out and buying that upgrade if you're already running 2011 or higher. Now it's possible, at least for EPICS reports, now it's possible that there are some new features there that will appeal to you for other reasons. So I'm not saying don't buy it, but if you're already running 2011 or higher, designing reports with EPICS and you're happy with that, then there's probably no reason to upgrade. If you are upgrading, it's probably safer to stick with the 2016 version, just because, again, SAP claims that the 2020 version doesn't support 32-bit applications. Like I say, my experience was that it does work okay. So it's really, your mileage may vary, but it looks good to me either way. And the nice thing is those are both for sale. You can still buy 2016 and 2020. They're both for sale on the SAP website. They're both for sale at Amazon, and they're both fully supported by SAP through at least the end of 2024. They've extended 2016 a couple of times now. So it's currently supported through the end of December of 2024. It's possible they'll extend it even more. I know they have a large user base of 32-bit users, so I would expect that to be around for a while. But again, 2020 may work for you. It like I say, in my testing, it worked fine. So it's really up to you which one you want to use. So the EPICS report viewer, as you know, when you install EPICS, before you install EPICS, you have to install the Crystal report viewer. We've been using the same version for quite a while. It's Service Pack 17, which was 13.0.17 if you look at the version. Well, we're going to be upgrading to the latest Service Pack. Right now, that's Service Pack 30. It's possible by the time we actually switch over that it'll be 31 or 32. Their release schedule is rather unpredictable. But we do want to get up to date to the latest version of that. The only catch is that means you will have to update that Crystal client on all your workstations at the same time that you update EPICS. So we'll give you plenty of warning about that. We'll send out a newsletter and say, hey, before you install this update, it probably will not be a major update because we don't want to make you wait on, if you don't want to go through that hurdle. So we'll probably put it on a minor update just so people who want to roll it out gradually can do that. But in any case, we'll let you know when that happens. And that will correct, I know a number of you have contacted us that you're running Sage accounting and you've had issues with the Crystal runtime that it uses conflicting with the version that EPICS uses. And there is a config file that you can use to fix that, but upgrading to the latest version of the runtime will take care of that issue as well as bring us up to date on all the bug fixes and everything else. So look out for that in the probably before the end of the year, but we don't have a firm date on that yet, but you'll get that in your email. So getting back to 32 versus 64-bit, and we often do get questions about, is EPICS a 32-bit or a 64-bit application? It's a 32-bit application. And some people say, well, when will we have a 64-bit version available? So I actually put out a poll, and I know a lot of you have replied. I looked at it just before we started, and the majority of people did respond that they're running 64-bit versions of Windows, because of course, if you had a 64-bit version of EPICS or any other application, it can only run on 64-bit Windows. So, but a number of you are still running 32-bit versions of Windows, either Windows 10, or a number of you are running Windows 7 on 32-bit. So, and then there was one respondent who said they had at least one workstation running Windows XP. And I'm sorry, you saw the previous slide. That's that's no longer going to be supported very soon, possibly in the very next update. I know that that they didn't specify, but that machine that's running XP is probably out on the shop floor, because as we all know, the shop floor is where old computers go to die, or at least to retire. So, but XP is, like I say, it's a 20-year-old operating system, and it's holding us back. And I'll talk about why in just a second. So anyway, I appreciate all your poll responses, and if more of you want to respond, the poll remains open. Just give us a better idea of of who's running what. So then the other logical question is, since everybody can upgrade to Windows 64 or haven't yet, so we can't have just EPICS 64-bit, why don't we have both 32-bit and 64-bit EPICS, just like Microsoft does with Office? Well, there's probably no performance benefit to justify maintaining two versions of EPICS and have you worry about which one you want to install and possibly having support issues. And I'll talk about one big support issue in just a second. But there's probably not a benefit to having two versions of EPICS, 32-bit and 64-bit. We've run some tests, and honestly, for what EPICS does as far as connecting to the database and presenting data on the screen, it doesn't seem to be any faster at all. Memory issues are easier to handle on 64-bit, but I'm going to talk about something in just a second that we can make improvements on 32-bit for that as well. But one big catch for those of you who have the die drawing viewer, you have to choose when you install FastLook on your network whether you want to run 32-bit or 64-bit. All of you right now are running 32-bit FastLook because you're running 32-bit EPICS, obviously. If you upgraded EPICS to 64-bit on one workstation, they would no longer, you couldn't upgrade FastLook to 64-bit because that would keep your other users from getting on, and the user on 64-bit would not be able to use the 32-bit library. That's just the way that FastLook structures it. So it would have to be if we upgraded EPICS to 64-bit, we would have to make sure that everybody upgrades to FastLook to 64-bit at the same time. And obviously we would work with Camel to make sure that was as painless as possible. But that's a big catch. The other slide that I had on here, or the other note that I removed, was the Crystal issue, because they claim that if you design a report with 2020, it can't be run, but I explained all that already. So that's not really an issue. But in any case, EPICS version 10, which is just a theoretical name for a product that hasn't even been developed or not in development yet, may very well be the first 64-bit version, which is to say we're going to stick with 32-bit EPICS as far as version 9 goes. And if we do go to a 64-bit platform, it will probably be version 10 at the earliest before we do that. So in the meantime, as I said, there are memory limitations, 32-bit, that occasionally, if you have a user who is opening up a bunch of large reports at the same time in EPICS, or they're running very huge, they're inquiring on 20,000 sales order items at a time on the item screen, I'm not sure why. And so at some point, you can end up getting an out of memory error. And that is not really out of memory. It just means the memory is fragmented to the point that EPICS can't find a large enough block to hold the next query or the next report. So the nice thing about getting rid of XP and Vista is that we can upgrade to a later version of the .NET platform, the .NET platform that EPICS runs on. And that will allow us to basically defragment memory as it's released. And that will, I think, eliminate probably 99.9% of those out of memory errors. In my testing, I haven't been able yet to run out of memory when I'm doing the garbage collection and defragmenting a memory that's supported by the current .NET framework. So anyway, if you have any other thoughts about 64-bit, the only other thing I will say about that is we have had people ask about a 64-bit version of EPICS Link, the EPICS Link library. That is something we are looking at, because that would just really affect the one machine that you're running EPICS Link on. If you've got a supplier of your software or a developer of your software that can only create a 64-bit application, it would be nice to have a native 64-bit EPICS Link. So that is something we are looking at. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on all of that. So moving on to a not so pleasant subject, but one that we really need to talk about, which is cyber attacks, particularly ransomware, which is, if you've read the newspaper lately, or you have not already been affected by it, you will know somebody who was, and hopefully you will not be. But here's an article from last year from the New York Times that basically just says, ransomware is growing exponentially, that the attacks are becoming more common, more damaging, and more expensive. And so what is ransomware? Well, it's basically a virus. It's a Trojan that infects one server or workstation, gets into your network on one machine, and then spreads throughout your network however it can. And they are very aggressive. They are very sophisticated. They're becoming more sophisticated. and very, very dangerous, and as I said, expensive. So basically, once that Trojan gets in, before it even encrypts your data so you can't see it, before you even know it's there, it can be collecting who knows what. So it can be just be browsing around for a while on your network, gathering email addresses, gathering network connections, gathering who knows what. So hopefully you will see that sort of traffic if you've got the right tools, but maybe you won't. And we're going to talk about a case study here where somebody thought they were prepared and it turns out they weren't. So once they've gathered all the data that they want from you, then they will fire off the second part of this virus, which is to encrypt your data so that you can't use it. And that's the point at which a message pops up on your screen and says, hey, you pay us money or you won't get your data back. And of course, because they have your data, they can do whatever they want with your data. They can gather whatever they want from your network and give it to your competitors, sell it on the dark web, do whatever they want with that data. So who is at risk to ransomware? Well, basically anyone with a computer. So large, medium, small companies, they don't seem to care. If they think you've got money or they think you can get money, then you're at risk. You are a target. And so there's bots out there on the internet everywhere, just trying to find a way in. And then once they're in, then the hacker looks around and sees, they look like they can get money. Let's have a go at them. So they attack companies, schools, city governments, fire departments, police departments, basically any entity with a computer network and has money, or they think you have money or can get money. And here's another quote from that same New York Times article. So it's basically an industry. It's organized crime. Some are large groups, some are small groups. You could just have some kid in his basement. But yeah, because you can download the software to create your own ransomware attack software. People are selling those through the web. So it's a growth industry, unfortunately. And there's more and more of this every day. As much as the big companies, the big software companies try to keep up with it. And as you know, there's a lot of tools to do antivirus scanning and malware scanning and so on. But there's always one more virus coming out the next day that renders all of that obsolete. So very, very dangerous stuff. We know of at least 6 EPICS customers who've been attacked by ransomware where within the past 2 years alone. And it's possible there's more than that. That's just the ones that we've been made aware of. Both large and small companies have been hit, extrusion companies. As far as I know, none of them know exactly where it originated, but normally it's either an email that comes in and somebody clicks on a link, gets one of those old, your Apple iTunes password has changed, please log in to change it back, or here's an Amazon gift card we want to give you just because we like you, please click here to claim it. So and then the same thing on websites. You're browsing the web at lunch and you see this great deal on a used car that's only $1,000 around the corner from you for $5,000. Please click here to go type in your name and address. And so if it looks too good to be true, and if there's lots of misspellings in it and it doesn't look like proper English, that's a pretty good clue that it's not coming from a reputable company. But you can be fooled even if it there's also well-written spam or phishing attacks that can fool you. So all these people received crippling ransom demands. None have actually paid the ransom, as far as we know. They all recovered without paying to get their data back. But that fight is always expensive. The lost time, the lost resources, potentially lost data you have to recreate. So it's you may have the best security system in the world, but if you get hit anyway, it's going to cost you. You're going to be out time and money to get back to where you were. So typically what happens, once the ransomware gets in, one of the typical things they will do is basically start wiping out passwords on your system so that users, particularly admins, can no longer log in to stop them. So they take basically complete control of whatever part of your network they can get access to. They then create passwords for themselves so they can obviously get in and out at their opportunity. At some point, again, probably after they've collected all the data they need to figure out how much money you're worth, they will encrypt your drives, and then you'll get a ransom demand on the screen. That doesn't mean they got in that day. They may have been in for days, weeks, or months, but that's the day that you know that you've got a problem. So they demand as much money as they think they can get from you. They'll say you can't get your computer back until you pay us, and if you really don't pay us, we're going to delete your data. So you won't even have your encrypted data. You won't have anything. We'll wipe your servers. We'll wipe your network. So and of course, for some reason, you can't trust these people. So even if you pay them, there's no guarantee that the hackers will decrypt your data or ever leave you alone afterwards. And let's say that's the danger when you've got a kid in his basement buying these tools off the web. That doesn't mean he even knows how to use them correctly. So it's possible that you could end up with encrypted data that even the hacker doesn't know how to decrypt. So it's bad. If I mentioned it's bad, this is a bad thing. So one case study that I mentioned, that actually a gentleman from Hydro or Hedro, depending on where you are, presented at a previous AEC conference. They were hit 2 years ago, and it was a new Trojan called Gootkit. There's variants of it now. Actually, it was a variant of an existing one, but it was designed specifically to attack Hydro because Hydro is a $16 billion company, $16 billion annual revenue, huge company, multinational. So they were obviously a whale that these hackers were willing to spend a lot of time and resources to go after. So when they were hit, they had 23,000 workstations on their network at the time. 11,000 of those became infected with this Gootkit Trojan. 2,700 of them then got encrypted. And they had 6,000 servers. 1,000 of those were infected. 500 were encrypted. The reason it didn't hit their whole network was, various security settings were maybe different across the network, but also because they had a very alert admin working after hours who saw what was going on, saw all the weird network traffic, and so shut everything down, basically hit the panic button and shut their whole network down, or it would have been much, much worse. To their best guess, they were these hackers were surveilling Hydro for 14 months. So they were in their network to one degree or another for over a year before they actually pushed the button that encrypted everything. So they do actually, they were able to determine, based on a lot of forensic digging, they determined what the first machine was that was infected and actually found the source. They were actually, once they got in, I said, they watched people's email, they watched network connections. They actually got email addresses of various Hydro customers, particularly their big customers, collected their email addresses, and then impersonated one of those. They basically created a duplicate of that email account, watched it for traffic coming to and from Hydro, knew that Hydro was expecting a purchase order from that customer. At that point, they took control of the email account, sent back a purchase order with a built-in, with the virus included. And that's how they got in. Nobody knew it at the time. Again, this was 14 months before they actually pushed the button to encrypt everything. So they did actually then activate it on a holiday weekend, long Easter weekend, when they thought nobody would be watching. Fortunately, there was someone watching. It was just basically an IT staffer who was, working midnight shift. He was just doing, emergency support for their users on the holiday weekend, and noticed all that weird activity, and basically stopped everything where he was, sent out the warning to all their other locations, said, hey, shut everything down until we figure out what's going on. And so that saved them from it being worse than it was. But one thing they learned was, because it had been on their network for 14 months, they couldn't trust all of their data. Basically, that Trojan can infect any executable program on the network. And so you wipe you clear everything off, you restore from your backups. Well, too bad, because the next time somebody starts up whatever application, the Trojan's alive again and starts spreading. So, and that can include things like Excel spreadsheets that have built-in macros. So, 3 months of backups were not enough to save all their applications. They were able to get all their data, just pure data files back. but a lot of their applications they had to rebuild or reinstall, or it was a big mess. Basically everything, they couldn't trust any application or executable anywhere on their network. So again, this is bad, but what can you do to protect your company? Well, of course, as I said, take all your normal IT security precautions. Make sure your firewall is blocking traffic you're not expecting coming in and out of your network. Make sure you've got spam filters everywhere. Make sure you've got anti-spyware, anti-malware, antivirus, etc. Everything. And make sure they're all up to date. Make sure your versions of Windows are up to date so that all those known security flaws that Microsoft learns about are applied to all of your machines. And you know that you can have those automatically applied. So keep everything as up to date as you can. All your anti-spyware, anti-malware, make sure it's all up to date as often as you can. Make sure to train everybody and remind everybody about the dangers of email coming in, particularly with attachments or with, if somebody embeds a link in an email, very, very dangerous. Unless you are very careful, and it's probably not a good idea, but if a customer sends you a link to something and you know how to read the URL and you see, hey, that's their domain, it's probably still a good idea to just type it into a browser so you're sure you're typing in their domain and it's not going somewhere else. So I know that's an inconvenience, but it's worth it to just try not to click on links in an email. Attachments, I think PDFs, I'm not aware of any viruses that currently affect PDFs. I could be wrong, somebody could correct me on that. But virtually anything else, particularly a spreadsheet, you open a spreadsheet that someone else has sent you, and the first question that Excel asks you is, do you want to enable macros on this or enable editing? And as soon as you do that, you've got a potential problem. So at the very least, do virus scans on every attachment that you receive. And when in doubt, don't open it. Or ask the customer to send it to you over a secure channel or something else. Email is just not secure, as everybody knows. Give limited network access to all end users. So if somebody out on the shop floor is only running EPICS and is only hitting 3 folders on your network, that's all you want to give them. The last thing you want is for a workstation that nobody's watching on a regular basis to have access to basically either the whole network or critical parts of your network that could cause them to then be able to chain on to get to other places. So if a user only needs access to certain folders, only give them access to those folders, so that if they get hacked, they don't have free reign to just run around the network grabbing anything they want. This one is tough, because I'm guilty of this myself, that a network admin account should only be used for admin functions. So if I'm logging in as a domain admin or even as a server admin on my server, I should only log in to do what I need to do, whether it's apply updates, whether it's to install software, whatever, and then log out. That for my normal day-to-day work, should not be using an admin login, because there's just too big a risk. If my machine then catches a virus because I've got admin rights, that virus can get everywhere on the network, and that's obviously not ideal. And finally, perform or hire somebody to do a full security audit to look for other vulnerabilities. So there's companies out there that will do that. That will basically they're white hat hackers that can come in and find problems like this and say, hey, we need to lock down this server drive. We need to add firewall rules, whatever. So it really requires very special expertise, which I don't have anybody to recommend, and I certainly can't do it. But if you'll look around, you'll find folks who can do this, and it's really worth it. Obviously do your own audit as well. Go through and just look for vulnerabilities. Go out to a workstation on the floor and just make sure you can't get places on the network that you didn't expect to be able to get to. Things like that, just common sense. But a full audit is really much recommended. And finally, as Jim said, we are going to talk about backups, and more backups. So you want to retain multi-level backups of all of your critical files and databases. And by that, I mean, obviously you're probably running a daily backup, or even more frequently, maybe you're running an hourly backup, but you obviously want to keep doing that so that if something goes wrong, just a normal kind of mishap, a server dies or something. Hopefully that's not normal, but anyway, you lose a piece of equipment and you need to do a backup, a restore from yesterday, you can do that. You also want to keep like a monthly backup. Maybe the end of each month you keep a backup, maybe at the end of each quarter, maybe one for the year. But just the more backups you have, the more ability you have to recover from some sort of catastrophe, whether it's an attack or whether it's some other sort of problem that you didn't realize you had until months later. And you do want to maintain those both on-site and off-site. On-site, just because it's a lot faster. If someone says, hey, I lost my workstation, can you get me another one? So you've got a backup right there at hand that you can immediately restore. But you want to keep copies of that backup off-site or in the cloud. And maybe somebody carries a hard drive back and forth with the monthly backup. They bring it in. I mean, that's the easy, the old sneaker net approach. We just keep a backup drive off-site. We only bring it in when we're doing a backup, and then we take it back off-site. But obviously, there are networked, internet-based versions of that same thing, or intranet. If you've got a VPN, maybe you've got an off-site location that you only connect to do that backup, and then you disconnect again. So anyway, on-site, off-site, cloud, all of the above. And of course, where possible, you want to network isolate all those backup drives. So if you do have a backup drive that you're using to do your daily backups, or even your monthly backup, it is best if it has custom credentials, that it's either not a member of your domain, or it's a member of your domain that has a unique login and password that is only used by that device. So, and then the application that actually does the backup is the only application that needs to have that password. So that again, if Joe's machine on the shop floor gets hacked, he doesn't even know that backup drive exists. And even if he can find it, even if the worm can find it, it can't log in. So it's best to not network isolate all those backup drives. And as I said, using custom credentials. So all those should have one way in, and it should be hidden from everybody. Finally, just be vigilant. Never ignore a potential threat. If something doesn't look right, no matter who spots it, they should be able to say, hey, my machine has gotten really slow, and it looks like all my network access is really gone south. I can't get to anything. That's a pretty good indicator that we've got something running crazy. It could also just mean Windows needs to be rebooted. But people should be willing to or able to come to admins and say, hey, this doesn't look right. It's not behaving the way it did. So you know to go out and do some looking. Also, have an emergency action plan. So that if you do get hacked, or there's a worm running loose, like I say, somebody has the panic button. Somebody knows, somebody there at all times, preferably, or who can log in or can be there in short order, knows how to shut everything down. And that may just mean pulling the plug. I mean, literally. If you're sure that you're under attack, or have very high likelihood that you're under attack, sometimes turning everything off is your best defense. And there is such a thing now as cyber liability insurance that can not only they will then help you get back online. So instead of you're using all of your personnel to go out and reinstall everything and clean all the files and run antivirus on all your databases, there are firms that will do that. And some of them will even say they will pay the hackers. You're paying your premium, they will cover the cost to pay the hackers to get the decryption keys. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but I know there are some who will do that. All right, so that's security and why hackers are bad. So next topic, similar, EPICS in the cloud. So it's similar meaning technology based, but hopefully there aren't viruses in the cloud. I didn't look today. So we do not offer EPICS hosting services. So I know that there are a lot of enterprise software companies out there, including Microsoft, of course, who will sell you their Office 365, which is cloud-based and auto updates itself and so on. We don't currently offer that, and we don't have current plans to do that. However, EPICS is fully supported on cloud servers. So, and we have a number of customers who've done that. So you can contract with Microsoft for their Azure services, or Amazon. I think there's some others out there. I know there's some others out there. And you can actually move EPICS, or as much of EPICS as you want, into the cloud. So basically, instead of having a server running at your location, all of your workstations, including PC clients or zero configuration thin clients, Windows terminals, will be connecting to a cloud server to run EPICS. So all they'll basically have at the office level will be their workstation and, I guess, printers, which will then be hitting their cloud servers. So that is fully supported. We're happy to help you out with that if you have any questions. And it's, like I say, it's relatively easy. It does require that you run a full desktop from those cloud servers. So you can't just install EPICS as a remote app and use a remote app to run EPICS, because EPICS needs to have access to an email client. It needs to have the die drawing viewer. Maybe you're opening Excel spreadsheets from attachments and so on. So you still have to have a full desktop install, but that's readily available through Azure or through Amazon. Or if you want, you can just move the EPICS database to the cloud. So basically keep EPICS running locally, but the database itself is in the cloud. And that can be useful, particularly for places who have multiple locations and don't have good connections between the plants. You know, if everybody's hitting the cloud servers, then everybody has the same experience across the network. And so assuming you're paying for enough bandwidth and you've got a good connection to the internet. So usual rules apply. You want to make sure that you've got really good internet service, and you've got a good provider, and you've got guaranteed 99.99% uptime, whatever it takes to make you comfortable. But EPICS, the EPICS database running on a cloud server is exactly the same to EPICS as the EPICS database running on a local server. And again, if you have questions about that, please let us know. So keeping EPICS up to date, very important. So we send out, when we issue an update, whether it's a major update or a minor update, we will send out typically a newsletter if it's a major update. Sometimes with a minor update as well, you get a newsletter, but you will always get an email as well. Your administrators will, saying, hey, this update is available. Here's the new features that are in it. Here's the link to the website to get more information. And so it's available for you at that time. Of course, at any point, if you're not running the current version, or you just want to see what's coming out in the next version, or the version you're currently eligible to download, you can always go to the update descriptions page. It's basically the V9, the support V9 downloads page, and then link from there. Or you can actually click the current EPICS version number on the main EPICS, or on the main website, to view a list of all those various features and all the various updates. And of course, you log in to the support V9 downloads page to grab that. And there are instructions there as well for both a major and a minor update. And I know a lot of you already know this, but I'm just reminding the process has not changed. It's basically still the same. Please make sure that if you're running EPICS Link for any applications in-house, it's always best to upgrade EPICS Link and EPICS at the same time, because they include all the same fixes and so on. If you were doing that through something like SCS Extrude through Granco Clark or Persetsi, we do work with them to make sure that they know what updates are included, what changes are being made. And typically we don't change anything as far as anything that would require a change of their program. It's basically we're just updating code under the hood to make corrections, or recently to support the new capacity planning, or to support the new die correction module. So keep EPICS Link and EPICS up to date at the same time wherever possible. So I know Mariah's going to do, this is my last thing, Mariah's going to do a session tomorrow on general EPICS tips and tricks, but I wanted to throw in a few admin tips and tricks just so that she doesn't have all the fun. So the first one here is if you're not using notifications, that's a feature in EPICS that was added a couple of years ago, but I'm not sure how many of you are using it. Anyway, it's there, and it's a great way to notify users of issues they need to be aware of. So for example, I can send out a notice to every user, tells them that, hey, we're doing an EPICS update Sunday from 6 to 7. So they just know they're not going to be able to get in for that hour and to be ready. And so I can send that notification out every time a user logs in. Oh, here we go. So when that user, then each time a user logs in, they'll see that message if there are any they haven't seen before. If they're already in EPICS, a little bell icon appears at the bottom of the screen, and they can click on it to see their notifications. So they basically just open the notification. It tells me, hey, I've scheduled an update. And so just a great way, again, to make your users aware, whether it's an EPICS update situation, whether you're just telling everybody, hey, the press is going to be down next Tuesday for maintenance, whatever. You can notify EPICS users about anything, and they can reply back to you and ask questions and so on. So it's configurable, but please just read the help docs on notifications and you'll see all the various ways you can use that. Here's a quick one. On the help menu, there's an item that says identify active window. And that basically just, if I've got a screen open in EPICS and I need to know who has permission to use it, or I want to know how to get permission to it, I might need to know that form name. So it just basically tells them the name of that window as it appears on the permission screen and can show what permission. So there it is, identify active window. I happen to have the create orders for stock replacement. I have no idea what the name of that form is. Anybody? It's FRM replace stock. And so that tells me then when I go to the permission screen that that's the form I want to look at to assign permissions. In this case, I am an admin, so I see not only just the name, which is what a normal user would see, but because I'm an admin, it shows me also who has permissions to that screen. So it's just a great way. If it's a user, you can say, hey, I need to write permission to FRM replace stock because it'll let me look at stock, but it won't let me create new orders, replacement orders. But anyway, this is just a really cool tool, shortcut to opening the permission screen and hunting for stuff. Similarly, under the help menu, identify config settings basically shows you all the config settings that are associated with that screen. So here I am on the DI maintenance screen. I go to help, identify config settings. It opens up the config screen, assuming I'm an administrator, and lists all the various configuration settings that apply to that screen. So it's where my dies are located, how I want to sort my drop-down customer list, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of overlap. You know, some config settings apply to multiple screens. So it may be, change it here, you may be affecting more than that. But in any case, these are all the settings that pertain to that screen. An item on the file menu that a lot of people know about, but a lot of people don't, which is to reload settings. Basically, you select that, and it's very similar to closing and reopening EPICS. So if a user comes to you and says, I need permission to the DI screen, you can set their permissions, tell them, hey, reload settings, and then immediately they will be able to get into that screen. They don't have to close EPICS and reopen. So it reloads configuration settings, it reloads permissions, it reloads language translations if you're using those. And even if you've made a change to the screen layout designer, it will reload that as well. So just a nice shortcut. Instead of saying log out and log back in, just say reload settings. Saves them having to type their password again. This one is kind of odd, but if you want to set the background, you know, in EPICS, you can set a background image. So here I've got a beautiful picture of the painted desert that I took a couple of years ago. So you can set a background image user by user. Every user has the ability to do that. They can go to the file menu and set their background or set their color. But you can actually apply the same background to every user with a SQL script. And so we can get you that script if you're interested. So if you want to apply the same company logo or maybe the picture of the employee of the month, whatever you want to throw on there, but you can run a script to actually apply that to all users.